Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast, Season 13, Episode 1. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we go. Great to have you with me. This is a little bit different because I'm videoing myself doing the podcast. 302 episodes in, and I decide to do something different. Why not? Because it just keeps life interesting, doesn't it? So I don't know whether I'll keep doing it or not. I don't know whether there's any benefit to doing this or not. But you know what? You got to sort of push the boundaries sometimes. But the great thing is, it's another new season here on Meaningful Money, and as always, I'm excited at the prospect of digging deep into a subject. Looking back over the 12 seasons, that's including the first 160-odd episodes, which are not really a season, but which are now lumped together as Season 1. But looking back over the 12 seasons completed to date, I realized that I haven't so far addressed the main challenges encountered by folks who are just getting started with their financial journey. And so this season seeks to address that. So more on that in just a sec, because you know what I'm going to say next. This podcast is brought to you with the help of my great friends at 7 Investment Management. 7IM specialize in something called multi-asset investing, which is something I obviously talk about a lot here. And I think that should form the core of most people's portfolio. 7M have been helping me out here since the spring of 2011, so it's a long time now, and that has enabled me to keep going, enables me to buy equipment. I'm surrounded by a lot of equipment here, and I certainly couldn't have got to where I am now without their help. So please do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk, and do check them out and say thanks maybe on Twitter as well. Okay. So I battled, actually, long and hard with what to call this season. I didn't really want to call it the getting started season. It's a little bit more than that. But it occurred to me while planning that the cohort of people most likely to be in the sweet spot to receive the insane amount of wisdom that's coming at you over the next few weeks, maybe they are probably the millennials. Okay, so that is the generation born, depending on who you listen to, between 1980 and 2000, or there or thereabouts. Some people have it sort of 1982 to 1999 or something like that, but let's just call it 1980 to 2000. It's going to be there or thereabouts. At first, I was really hesitant to name the season Millennial Finance because potentially that would alienate those folks who are getting started with their money, but who are maybe starting late. All right, but you know what? Sometimes you have to call it like it is, really. So as I've planned the season, it turns out I am really going to be speaking directly to millennials for the most part, except for one episode in the season. More on that a little bit later. So I want to dive in today's session, where I'm going to introduce what I reckon are the 6 key challenges faced by those who are make a really good start with their financial planning. So as ever, notes and links from today's show, they're at the show notes, and it's the only link you need to remember if you're out and about and can't write any of this stuff down, okay? MeaningfulMoney.tv/MF1. That's for Millennial Finance Episode 1. So meaningfulmoney.tv/MF1. Let's look at what you need to know first. Now, 6 challenges, I reckon, that this is easily the most researched season I've ever put together. It's like I'm growing up 300 episodes in, putting even more thought into this stuff than I normally do, but certainly this is the most research I've ever done for a season. And I've identified 6 key challenges that millennials face. So the first one of those is living longer. So according to the Office of National Statistics, if you're 25 now, and if you're a man, your life expectancy is to about age 80. If you're a woman, your average life expectancy will be to about age 83. But of course, the longer you live, the better your life expectancy is likely to be. So if you're a 65-year-old man now, average life expectancy is about 83 and a half. If you're female, it's just shy of age 86, something like that. But remember, averages, They can be dangerous. Average is, by definition, half of all people will live longer than that. So, when you think of the advances in medicine over the past 40 years, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility for average life expectancy maybe to hit 90, maybe even longer. That's average, okay? I'm not an expert in this area, as you've probably gathered. But chances are we're going to be living longer. So why is that a challenge? I hear you cry. Well, the biggest impact to your wealth of this particular challenge, I think, is likely to be multifaceted. Firstly, you're going to be working for longer. And that means you'll have longer to earn, which is great, subject to health, of course. That's definitely a good thing. But your state pension age and the age at which you can take benefits from your other pensions, that's going to be pushed back too. So yes, you have longer to work, longer to save. If you live a long time, inflation is a real pain in the neck. I mean, seriously, if your expenditure is $30,000 a year when you retire, if you're still around 30 years later, that's going to be £72,000 a year to buy the same kind of lifestyle. That's if inflation is at 3%. So can you imagine the pot of money you're going to need to sustain a withdrawal rate of 72 grand a year after you've been withdrawing from it at 30 grand a year from the start? Living longer is only cool if you've got your health to enjoy it. I think medical care is going to keep us alive for longer. Might come at a cost, though. Who knows what the future of the NHS might be? So, it's time to get serious about the implications of living longer. We need to think about this stuff. We need to be intentional about it, as always. Have a plan for it, not just sort of cross our fingers and hope for the best. So, challenge number 1, living longer. Challenge number 2, lower returns. So not only is your money going to have to last a long time while you're spending more each year in retirement, on top of that, the returns you'll be getting on your money when it's invested are going to be lower, probably, than they were for your parents and grandparents. If you read the excellent book, The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, he rightly quotes equities, that is, shares in companies. He quotes them as being the driver of investment growth. A fantastic book called Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray preaches the same kind of stuff. Dave Ramsey frequently quotes 12% per year as a historical average return of equities. Well, if you've got the spine for a 100% equity portfolio, to be able to cope with the volatility of that, it might still be possible to get 12% a year on average. But I think that's a little bit toppy, really. I think it's going to be less than that probably going forward. But again, averages are fairly useless things, right? Markets go up and down. They don't just go in nice average straight lines. Most of us prefer to control our volatility a little bit by tempering our equities and balancing them out a little bit with bonds and other stuff, property, private equity and alternatives generally, simply because we can't handle the potentially very violent swings that a portfolio with everything in shares might throw at us. Property too, I think, is going to grow much more slowly in value on average than it did for our parents' generation. More on that in a minute, but it's indicative, I think, of a lower, slower world in the years to come. Of course, even talking about the world is way too much of a generalization. You've got the developed world and emerging and frontier markets, all of which are growing at different paces, different sort of volatility levels throughout. So there's lots to talk about when it comes to investing, and we're going to bring in some of that as we go through this season. So challenge number 2, lower returns. Challenge number 3 is expensive housing. A recent study by the Resolution Foundation said that 1 in 3 millennials will never own a home. That's potentially very depressing. Now, it's worth mentioning here that our obsession with property ownership is somewhat localized. Fewer people buy houses in places like Germany per capita than do here in the UK. But, that's immaterial. If you want to own a home, the fact is that it's more difficult to do than it used to be because of the differential between house prices and earnings. According to Rightmove, the average house price down here in Cornwall is £238,700 at the moment that I'm recording this in December 2018. The average wage is about £20,500 here in Cornwall. Now, assuming you've got 2 people buying a house, which is a big assumption, of course, and certainly not always the case, if you've got 2 people buying a house and they both earn the average wage, well, the average house price is about 5.8 times the combined wage. Now, compare that to when I bought my first house in 1997. It was 55 grand in Whitchurch in Cardiff. And my wife and I, between us, were earning about 27,000 at the time. And so the house price was just over twice our combined wage. Compare that with sort of 5.5, 6 times that, and we're talking combined wages here. And there may not be combined wages. It might just be one. So obviously that leads to the recognition that it's even more difficult to buy a place if you're on your own. It's also pricey to rent. Hands up anybody who's heard the phrase, "Oh, renting is just dead money. It's being paid to someone else rather than furthering your own wealth building efforts." Well, maybe, but there's clear benefits of renting as well. In today's smaller and much more fluid world, renting means you're not tied down to a property, and that might be something that we need to look at. I don't think we need to assume that buying a property is absolutely the right thing for everybody to do. Is there an answer to this, more expensive housing? Well, I think there are some things you can do to maximize your chances of buying a home one day if that's what you want to do. Patience is definitely going to be a virtue though, right? And laser focus on your goal is going to be a necessity. So higher house prices relative to wages is a challenge that many of today's millennials are facing. Challenge number 4, lack of job security. I should probably word that slightly differently. Maybe something like a fluid job market. Certainly different to what it used to be. It's very different. They reckon the average number of jobs in a working lifetime is now between 10 and 15. All right, that's a long way from sticking for 40 years in the same job. And that wasn't unusual 1 or 2 generations ago. I am on my 6th job. Probably my last, because I own part of this company, but it's actually only my 2nd career. Personal finance, financial planning, it's only my 2nd career. My first, I kid you not, was as a manager for McDonald's. Yes, it's true. But apparently 5 different careers is likely for many millennials. Millennials, I think, have a bad rep for job hopping and not really sticking at anything. Worth mentioning, actually, I don't have much time for the abuse that millennials come in for. I think, like anything, it's way too general and usually thrown at millennials by people who actually don't understand what they're talking about. But that's kind of by the wayside. So while millennials have a rep for job hopping, apparently that has dropped by 1/3 in the last 10 years. Some commentators have put that down to the fact that younger workers actually crave job security in a world where it's fairly hard to come by. We're in the age now of 0 hours contracts and the gig economy. These things present both opportunities and challenges. And that's a key theme, actually, that many of the challenges that I'm talking about, as you'll see as we dig in, are also challenges, opportunities rather, in their own right. So it's fairly easy to see how these challenges interplay, right? If you're worried that you'll never buy a home and you're going to be renting forever, that's potentially even more scary if you don't know what your retirement income is going to be. And it's hard to have any idea about that if your job situation is, shall we say, fluid. Lack of job security means lack of benefits from your employer, potentially. Pension schemes have already changed just beyond recognition from the old job for life, great pension for life days of my parents' generation. Now, you are the one taking all the risk. You're the one who's got the uncertainty of investment returns, withdrawal rates once you get to retirement, all that sort of stuff. I'm afraid, more than ever, your future financial security is entirely in your own hands. But don't worry, there is clear light at the end of this tunnel, as you'll see as we go through the season. There are more reasons to be optimistic, I believe, than there are to be depressed about this stuff. Okay, but job fluidity, I think, is another key challenge. Challenge number 5 is high student debt. Lots of sources that I've read cite high levels of student debt as being a big issue for millennials. Many of those articles are from the US, though, and the whole system is different there. Long-time listeners and readers of my book will know that I'm actually a big fan of the UK student loan system. I would love, of course, for higher education to be free, just like it was for me, and it's not free for my kids. My eldest daughter is in her first year of university. I'd love for it to be free, but it isn't. So, we are where we are, and we need to understand the system that we're living in so that we can navigate it. Martin Lewis, he of Money Saving Expert fame, calls the UK student loan system a graduate tax, and he's dead right. What that means, of course, is that over a certain income level, your effective tax rate is going to be higher if you have student loans than it would be if you don't. The quid pro quo to that is supposed to be that your job prospects will be brighter for having the degree. But that's pretty broad brush dealing with the subject. There's plenty of people who don't have degrees who are earning very well. So as ever, we can't generalize too much. A higher tax rate means less take-home pay. And that means affording all the other stuff is more difficult. I'm not talking about avocado toast here, right? I'm talking about, saving for a house deposit while paying rent and, eating, that sort of thing. Affordability is a big deal for many millennials. It certainly affects mortgage applications. So again, you see how all these challenges are linked. So debt, I think, exerts a powerful psychological weight on us, even if it isn't a debt in the usual meaning of that term, as is the case with student debt. It can still feel heavy around our necks. When you know that you owe 50-odd thousand pounds, that can be a psychological burden, and we need to address that and understand how to deal with it. So that's high student debt. And the final challenge, number 6, is financial illiteracy. Incredibly, even in the internet age, where we have the entire sum of human knowledge on tap through our phones, way too many of us remain financially illiterate. We still don't teach it formally. Okay, we don't really teach it to kids or those going to tertiary further education, before they become somewhat financially independent for the first time and have to manage their own money properly for the first time, either when they go into the workplace or when they go into higher education. I had a recent meetup back at the beginning of November in London, and I was chatting to some of the superstars that showed up to that to join Damien Fay of Money to the Masses and me for a drink in London. At some point, and fair to say my recollection is a little bit hazy, we were bemoaning the fact that those who listen to this show, Meaningful Money, Damien's show, Money to the Masses, and all the others, those who read personal finance books and have an interest in this stuff, they're really not the ones who need to hear it. The biggest challenge for me and for those like me who want to improve financial literacy here in the UK and beyond is engaging those people who right now couldn't give us stuff about it or don't know that they need to learn this stuff. I think it's wrong that for too many people, it's only when they're faced with potential financial disaster that they really pull their heads out of the sand and start to take control. Until we make this a mandatory part of the, I think, tertiary, 16, 17, 18, that sort of age, curriculum, before kids go into the world of work or higher ed, I think this is going to remain a problem for us. Despite my best efforts, folks, I haven't reached everyone yet. So please tell everybody you know about this show. Certainly if you get any value from it, please do that. I know that many of you are real evangelists and advocates for this show. Financial illiteracy leaves you at the mercy of a system which wants to overcharge you for doing stuff you can easily do yourself. Worse, it can leave you open to fraudsters who want to rip you off completely. At the most benign end of the scale, ignorance can make you err towards leaving money, quotes, safely in the bank and at the mercy of the ravages of inflation, rather than investing to build for the future. So we need to summarize now what we need to know. Okay, actually, it's not really what we need to know because I haven't done a sort of... I think I said right at the start, let's look at what we need to know first. There actually isn't much what we need to do for this one. It's a season intro, okay? So let's just summarize. 6 major challenges. Challenge 1, living longer. 2, lower investment returns and property growth returns. 3, expensive housing relative to earnings. Number 4, a fluid job market and somewhat of a lack of job security. Number 5, high student debt and the impact on affordability. And number 6, arguably the one that brings them all together, financial illiteracy. Now, all this stuff might sound ever so depressing, right? But for you millennials, you've got a lot of stuff going for you. The aforementioned sum of human knowledge at your fingertips is a real start, as long as you know how to navigate it and, of course, filter out all the porn and the cat videos to get to the useful stuff. But you are also the most educated generation in human history. You will enjoy the healthiest and longest lives. Yes, that's a benefit as well as a challenge. Millennials, I'm talking directly to you now, looking into the camera. I think it's going quite well, the filming. we'll see when I watch it back. But I'm talking to you, millennials. You have a bad rep for being entitled, for being ignorant. But I'm thinking that's not you, actually. Yes, you. Yeah, you listening to this or watching it right now. I reckon that you're keen, actually, to bite the bullet, take control of your future. And if that is you, then you and me, we're going to get along just fine. And this season is going to be fantastic for you. The fact that your future is more in your own hands than any previous generation, I think, is going to be a blessing rather than a challenge. Being dependent on yourself and nobody else is, to my mind, the very definition of freedom. So it's not going to be easy, any of this stuff. It's going to be a challenge for sure to secure your own financial future. But, challenge is fun, right? Are you with me? So for the next 6 weeks or so, I want to look in depth at each of the challenges and offer ways to sort of stack the odds back in your favor, really. So here's a bit of a spoiler. All the challenges faced by the millennial generation, I believe, can be met head on by some simple, timeless, and time-honored financial disciplines. We might need to tweak them a little bit to bring them into the 21st century, but some things really are timeless. And that's great news, that actually the same disciplines that put your parents and grandparents in a good financial place can also do the same for you. All right? The world has not actually changed that much when it comes to this stuff. So I'm going to address, starting next week and for the following 6 weeks, I'm going to address one of those 6 challenges in some serious depth and give you some clear action points as to what to do. Now, after that, in week 8, I want to talk specifically to millennials and encourage you to play to your strengths in a session I'm going to call, probably anyway, it might change by the time I get to it, Start Young, Start Strong. Okay? Talking specifically to those who are younger. The following week, in week 9, I want to address those late starters and encourage you that it's never too late. These are likely to be folks in their 40s, 50s, and maybe even later, and they think that they've blown it by not getting their act together so far. But it's never too late to make a difference to your financial future, and I want to help you get things in order. And then, as has become traditional here on Meaningful Money, I'll have a Q&A episode specific for this season at the end of the season to wrap things up, hopefully address the main themes coming out from your comments and questions throughout the season. And that will take us right through to the middle end of March. Okay? So if any of this stuff resonates with you, I want you to let me know. And I've set up a special email address to collect questions for this season. The email address you need is season13@meaningfulmoney.tv. Season13@meaningfulmoney.tv. That's what you need to email me if you've got any questions. You can also, of course, leave comments on the individual show notes. And today's is meaningfulmoney.tv/MF1 for Millennial Finance 1. So if you're a millennial and if you've got a specific question you'd like me to answer, season13@meaningfulmoney.tv is the email address to send it to. There's always 5-Minute Friday as well, and I like to answer questions on there, and what I'm going to try and do is to keep those specific to this season. So send me an email and maybe I will answer your question on a 5-Minute Friday as well. There is so much content coming at you in this season. I'm super excited about it. Cool. Right. Well, do you know what? Shall we do some reviews? I think I'm actually going to say no. I'm going to not put any reviews in this week, and I'm going to just mention we got a Facebook group now, which is extremely exciting. So that's a group as opposed to a page. So I've always had a page where I've put up the latest posts and podcasts and videos and stuff, but this is a group where you can join in a discussion. And, ask whatever questions you want there. I'll be in the group. And, of course, it's a community, so other people will also be able to answer your questions, which is super cool. That's what we want, really. So the community, fans of the show, and those who are looking to take their personal finances seriously, that you can get answers to your burning financial questions. So definitely dive in at meaningfulmoney.tv/community. Will take you, it'll kind of redirect you through the magic of the internet. meaningfulmoney.tv/community will take you to the Facebook group. Phew. Okay, so next week. Oh, actually, I'm going to mention at this early stage, it's funny, I've never been this organized with a podcast season before. And so I'm recording this at the sort of beginning of December, and we're still planning stuff. Okay, and I'm going to announce something which will definitely be happening, but I'm just not sure exactly when. But I'm putting together a resource, shall we call it, an online resource to help folks, not just millennials, but anybody getting started with their personal finances. So I'm just going to tease it here. And if I've got something more concrete for you by the time this goes live, then I'll add a link to the show notes. So it's going to be a pretty cool resource. Not exactly sure when it's going to be ready because it's going to take a lot of work to get it sorted. So head to the show notes, and if it's ready or there's links and stuff, it will be in the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/MF1. Cool. Right. It's weird thinking about the camera as well as the microphone and, mixing this stuff on the fly and pressing the sort of sound effect buttons and all this sort of stuff. It's quite challenging, I'm not going to lie, but I'm having fun. Next time, we're going to be talking about the first of our 6 challenges. Fade up the music. There it is. First of our 6 challenges is living longer, which of course is a challenge and a benefit, but has some financial implications. So stay tuned for that, folks. Thank you for joining me for this intro session. Super excited about this season. We've got some serious ground to cover. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you very soon. Cheers.